everybody. I'm glad to see you. My name, as Shilpa said, is Andrew Townley, and I'm the founder and Chief Executive of Archistry. And what I do is I help the Global 500 build effective, value-driven security programs. I've written 3 books on security architecture, AI effectiveness, and organizational value delivery through security alignment. And I'm a certified SAPSA security architect. I'm also a certified Amplio consultant educator and agile coach. So that means that I have a pretty broad scope and have done a lot of things from a lot of different perspectives in terms of an organization, which is why I can talk to you about what I'm talking to you about today. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, today I'm going to talk to you about our biggest problem in security, why doing everything right isn't really making much of a difference. So let's talk about where we are today. I think a lot of people in security are actually terrified right now. Why? Well, on April 7th this year, Anthropic kind of tossed a live hand grenade right through the front door of every organization on the planet. They announced Project Glasswing, and they told us about a model that was reportedly so powerful that it meant every latent cybersecurity vulnerability in every platform underpinning every organization could potentially be found in hours, maybe minutes. And of course, the media went crazy. We've seen the headlines now for months, and everybody is worried. Everybody's talking about, my LinkedIn feed is every day, somebody is still talking about mythos and the apocalypse and all of this. So we need to ask ourselves, really, okay, so now what? Well, the problem we have is we have a very fixed notion of what security means today, and it's really about 3 things. So the first one is, well, we have to find all the threats, and then we've got to, mitigate all those threats we find, and then that means we fix all the vulnerabilities. That's pretty much what everybody on the planet understands security is about today. But where does that really leave us? Well, it means that pretty much most security programs effectively or directly revolve around the incident response lifecycle, right? So everybody knows this. This is a pretty standard view of it, but it means that, we prepare. But what does that mean? It means we kind of pretend to be proactive because we're scanning our environment. We're not controlling our environment. We're looking at our environment, and we think that if we find the things first, then that means we're being proactive. But is it? Because what really happens? Well, we discover a gap, we fight that fire, and then we deploy new controls, and then we reset the clock. We're really on this, what I call the security pinwheel of doom, because there's no end. It never stops. We think that if we do this better and faster and with more tools, then we're really finally going to be proactive. But we can't because of the way that it's set up. Because ultimately our definition of success ends up being endless prevention. How is that? How can we actually do that? But wait, there's more. Because what do we really come at security from in the first place that sets up the security pinwheel of doom? Well, we look at our enterprise and we say, okay, our enterprise is consisting of things that we have to find. So if we are looking at things from a non-threat of vulnerability perspective, we look at our assets, we look at the risks to those assets, then we look at defining control objectives or pull those from some standard, then we deploy our security tools, and then we have our security vendors that provide those tools. We've also got all of our policies and the standards that we're using. And all of this means that, okay, we're trying to define our attack surface around the enterprise. But what is it really? It means that this is really control-based security. So we deploy the controls, we have a list of the things that we think we're supposed to do. We look at every project that comes along and we compare it against that list. But what are we really doing? Because if we're control-based, then that means that really all we're doing is monitoring things. And what are we monitoring? Are we monitoring the things that actually matter, or are we just monitoring activity? evidence of activity is not actually evidence of assurance. Everybody knows this. You hear it in the industry all the time. Compliance isn't security. Controls don't mean you're safe. So why do we keep believing it? Because you can comply perfectly and still have no idea whether the organization can successfully achieve what it's supposed to do. And we are in this situation where now all of the things that we're doing, we knew we couldn't do them fast enough before, and now, oh my God, AI, what are we going to do? But we say, okay, we need support from the business, we need more budget, we need you to pay more attention, we need you to take cybersecurity seriously, we need cybersecurity expertise on the board, but it doesn't happen. So we need to step back and we need to say, well, why don't they care? What are we missing? What are we doing? Because the thing about communication is, if you really care about getting your message across, it's not about the message that people hear, it's about the message that you receive. And communication, just because you say something doesn't mean communication has happened. And it's on the person who is trying to communicate the message to actually make sure that that message is understood and received correctly, not just throw it over the wall and, well, they don't get it, and so they're the ones with the problem. So what's really going on? Well, what's really going on is we have our security language on one side of the divide. We talk about threats and CVEs and severity levels and controls and, GRC, don't forget GRC. But the business is on the other side of this divide. And they talk about revenue and delivery and trust and outcomes and continuity. We've been talking about the business IT divide, the IT security divide, the business security divide for like 30 years. And we've never breached this and connected these things together. But we don't ask why. We just try and shout louder, or we try and demand our seat at the table or whatever else. But we never actually define security in terms the organization actually needs or care about. Because without shared language, communication just fails. It's impossible. So why are we struggling so much? Why can't we get this message across? Why can't we define this common language? Well, it happens because we keep asking the wrong questions. So what questions are we asking? Well, it's pretty straightforward. The first question we ask is, well, what frameworks do we follow? The second question we ask is, well, what policies do we need? The third question we ask is, okay, well, what assets do we have, right? And so if we start there, there's only one place that leads us, and that leads us to control and threat and vulnerability overload. We've got lists and lists and lists of things that we've got to track, and every year that list gets bigger. But the real problem is each one of these things is ostensibly equal, because we have to treat them all. We've got to prioritize them. But how do we prioritize them? We can prioritize them based on maturity. We can color in the boxes of what we have and haven't done. We can say that, okay, well, these are health and hygiene and these are more sophisticated. But what is the context in which we're doing that? It's in terms of the assets and the controls and whatever in isolation. And that means that what we're really dealing with is this network of stuff that is just exploding. Threats, risk, tools, exceptions, controls, policies, alerts, frameworks, and we're running around and around in circles on the security pinwheel of doom. And you know what? That is the job. That is the job we've been told we need to do. And the thing is, AI didn't create that job. AI didn't create that problem. AI exposed that. I mean, this is the job. And when you stand back and you look at it, it's like, wow, how can we do that normally? And the answer is we can't. We get a 30% year-on-year increase in CVEs. That's the rate right now. This year it's probably going to be even more, especially with Mythos and all of the other AI security vulnerability initiatives that are going on out there. We couldn't keep up before, and we think that AI is going to help us keep up, and the bad guys get AI, and then we get back in this spiral, right? But again, why are we here? Why are we trying to do an impossible job? Because we've got this divide. We've got security, and we're trying to go one way, and we got the business, and they're trying to go the other way, and that can't help but produce friction. We're trying to do two separate jobs under the same organizational umbrella, and nobody understands that it's inherently impossible. We just have normalized it. We think, oh, well, security is just a cost center. Security has to slow things down. We've got to have gates. But that isn't actually true. That comes as a result of how we think about security itself. We have activity without assurance, we have control without alignment, and we have protection without a definition that links that protection to what it actually is supposed to do. I mean, that is the problem, and that is what has to stop. It's not about AI. We created this problem ourselves. AI just amplified it and hopefully makes it impossible for us to ignore, but we're not ignoring it because we are ignoring it because we think that we just need more. And that's our problem. That's what we've been told is the problem. We don't have enough tools. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough tech. We don't have enough coverage. We don't have. But if we're doing the wrong things, well, of course we don't have it because it's impossible. So what we need to do is we need to look at what we are doing and how we're defining security and start asking ourselves, okay, well, if those are the wrong questions, what are the right questions? So let's kind of look at this from a different perspective. Let's start with the outcome that the organization actually wants. They want growth, they want revenue, they want profitability, they want time to market, they want flexibility and agility, right? These are the things, again, we've been talking about for decades at this point, and we still haven't been able to deliver. And every time security advances, we tend to drag on any of those things. So that means that we're not advancing in the right way at all, because if we're stopping what it is that people want done, then how are we actually doing the right thing? So if we start at the outcome the organization want and we work backwards and we ask the question, okay, well, if that's what they want, what must be true in order for them to get it? It's a simple question, but unpacking it is actually where we get the answers as to why security fails when we're doing everything right, because that's not where we're focused. So what does this mean? Well, this means that we need to redefine security such that security then isn't the absence of threats or vulnerability or CIA or any of the things that we typically think about. Security then is the degree of confidence that we're going to get what we want. So why is this definition important? Well, this definition is important because then instead of looking at what it is that we're trying to keep from happening, we say, okay, well, if this is the things that have to exist, then how will these fail? And there's really only three ways that any of the things that are required to get an outcome can fail. The thing we need isn't there. The thing that we get either doesn't work the way we expect, or it hurts us. It has harmful side effects. It has embedded, vulnerabilities that are compromises or Trojans or anything that has additional capability that we don't expect. Or we get it, it's right, it's safe, but we're not able to actually use it. So we have these controls, but the delivery team can't effectively integrate those controls, so they don't. The controls exist, the controls are fine, but they're not used. The thing is that when we look at security this way, it doesn't matter why something happened. It could be space aliens, it could be nation state actors, it could be somebody tripping over a power cable or spilling things in the data center, or a data center catching fire. The thing is, it happens. The thing we need is not there. And if we're not prepared for the thing we need not being there, then how can we prioritize all the different ways that it could not be there? Prioritization and the threats come after we figure out what we're going to do and what we need if what we actually require to get a result aren't there. So that actually changes the game quite considerably, because instead of the job being manage this explosive mess of stuff, we focus on objectives. We focus on success conditions. We focus on critical dependencies. We focus on limiting constraints and essential assurance. So the traditional threat model that we've been taught is what can go wrong. If we flip it around and say, well, what has to be true? What must go right? Then that narrows the scope quite considerably. And all of the stuff and all of the ways something can break become secondary to, are we confident we have what it takes for us and the organization to get what we want? So what this allows us to do then is to stop defending against everything and actually start ensuring success. So what changes? Well, before, we were stuck on the security pinwheel of doom, constantly reactive, because that's the only thing we can do. If we don't ever have a chance to look at what is required, then of course, we deal with what we're given. We're given a new solution. We're giving a new business model. We're given a new market. We're giving a new product, and they say secure it because they think that's possible, but it's not possible. Because after the fact, we are way too late and we end up in the security pinwheel of doom, and we're doing everything right. We're doing everything the industry has taught us to do, and we are still not making a difference. AI didn't cause this problem. AI just exposed it. But afterwards, then, well, hey, look, we've got outcome alignment. We're suddenly bridging that security business divide because we're all trying to get the same thing done. They want to achieve an objective. We are trying to help them achieve that objective as safely and securely as possible. And when they can't, because they're trying to cut corners or whatever, we have a way to say, look, okay, if that's what you want to do, then these are the implications. This is the actual decision you're making. But we can't have that conversation if we're saying, oh, well, you forgot this control, and oh, well, you know, we're going to get fined or whatever. That's all abstract. This makes it real for the things that people care about. So we get resilience. We're building resilience in. We get protection of flow and execution and value delivery. And we enable adaptive governance for real, not GRC theater. GRC is the wrong stuff in the wrong place. We need to put all of that into an integrated environment where security and governance are outcomes and just a normal part of what we do. We're not in silos anymore. So yeah, if we do this, then we finally get off the security pinwheel of doom, and we finally bridge the security business divide, and we're all focused on the same things. And we're actually able to, by focusing on those same things, we're able to stop chasing our tail. Stop being afraid of our shadow, stop being afraid of every new technology and thing that comes out, because it doesn't matter how something happens. It matters whether we can deal with the consequences of it first. And only if we have understood what we're dealing with, do we have the information that we need to prioritize which prevention controls are going to go in place, because which threats are actually things we can do something about. It changes the game entirely. And once we do that, we can put AI back in the box where we should have it, not being afraid of it as just one more thing that we deal with, and it's normal. It's not special, because it isn't. And we can stop being afraid of what AI means to security. So the reality is, by focusing on what you can control, instead of worrying about all the things we can't, because we can't control threats, we can't control vulnerabilities, they're going to be there anyway, because we don't actually control every part of every piece of software we use or build. We just don't. And if we shift from trying to control the impossible to the smaller set of things that we can actually control, then we can actually really finally change the future of security. That's where we need to go, and I hope it made sense. Thank you very much. I'm Andrew Townley. Yes, that is a great question. And the answer is, in a way, yes, because the security controls that people are adding are independent of what the organization really needs. And it's often in complete, unawareness of what value delivery is being potentially disrupted by adding more controls, because controls aren't free, right? You add something and it has a consequence. So if you are not aware of the larger environment and the larger system and the goals and objectives that may be disrupted, then yeah, you're making failure become more and more inevitable. But the thing about complexity is everybody worries about trying to tame complexity. You can't really tame complexity. You can just move it around. And that's why if you focus on what must be true for you to get a result, then you've done what I call violently encapsulating complexity down to the parts that actually matter most to you, and then you can work your way out. So complexity is never going to go away, but you can control how much of that complexity is actually relevant to you. And that's what we're not doing, as we keep adding on all of these layers and layers, because we don't really understand the implications they have. We just keep trying to fix and fix and fix and fix and fix. And we're making our organizations more brittle and more failure prone, exactly as you surmised. Yes, we see this all the time. Another great question. I mean, this comes back to the, compliance isn't security. And if you don't close the loop, if you don't actually understand, okay, well, we've got all these controls, but how are they used? Are they actually delivering the value that we actually expect? And this is one of the things where most security organizations I've ever dealt with really struggle, because they don't know how to control those loops. Again, we're measuring activity. We have these controls. We see these number of alerts. We see these number of phishing attempts. But okay, so what does that actually mean in the context of anything the organization cares about? And this is the biggest reason security has trouble talking about the value that it has to the organization or communicating at board level, because we're talking about activity and counts of numbers of things of whatever. And it doesn't matter, because it's not contextualized to what anybody else cares about. It's what we live every day. But and this is my biggest critique of GRC engineering, because if we're just implementing the controls and we're automating those controls quicker, and okay, we can prove those controls are there, but are they actually doing the things we expect? We're focused more on making sure that nothing is missing than actually, are these things adding value? Is the delay and drag and friction that they that go with them really justified? And are they making a difference? That's the gap that we need to fill in security today. Well, I mean, AI is a tool, exactly as you say. It can be used for good and for bad. The problem is that we have an AI arms race, and we all know how that works out. I mean, it's like mutually assured destruction, right? Everybody builds more and more capable things, and then we've got this situation where, again, we're on another spiral that we can't get off until, just like in the 1980s movie War Games, it finally figures out the best way to win is to not play. So we right now are playing an arms race game where we are still And that arms race is fueled by what I talked about in the presentation, that our job is the enumeration and mitigation of every new threat that comes along, and they're all equal, and we will never be able to do that job. So if we start from the wrong place, then we are going to get into this AI loop that will never end. But AI is very useful. I mean, I use AI every day for a lot of different things, and it can help defenders. It can help the attackers. But again, what is it helping them do? Are we using AI to figure out what must be true for us to get a result? Or are we using AI to figure out, oh, well, where are the as yet unexploited vulnerabilities? And therefore, we're amplifying the pinwheel of doom, and we're continually reacting to what's there. So I think the answer to the second part of your question, where are we going to be in the next year to 5 years from now, depends entirely on how we decide we are going to use AI. If we use AI as an amplifier of more of the same, then that's all we're ever really going to get, is more of the same. We're going to be more overwhelmed, we're going to need more tools, and it's never going to stop. Or we can use AI to help us focus on the things that we can control, and that will change the game too. The defenders will have to use AI the way they use it today, but if we change, then we've changed the rules of the game. And we can't be playing the same game if we want to win with AI. That's the only thing that is true no matter what. This is exactly the right question. You are thinking about this exactly correctly, because what enables the shift from resilience and rapid recovery? What must be true? What has to go right? What are the things that cannot fail? And we have to accept that reality, we can't control reality. We can't control our vendors. We can't control what developers do. So we have to adopt a resilience first mindset. And that's what I talk about when I talk about containment by design. Containment by design says we know exactly what you said. Failures are inevitable. And so because of that, we need to focus on what we can control to make sure that we're prepared for those. I mean, if you do that and half your data center is on fire, okay, if you plan for that and you designed for that and you understand how much time you have before you're out of business, or what the business impact of that is going to be in terms of delayed delivery or revenue or whatever, you can make different decisions. You've already figured it out before it happens. And that's where we get into trouble now. We get an incident and it's like, oh, we aren't ready for that. But the shift that we need to make is absolutely, we've got to get focused on containment, we've got to focus on resilience, and we've got to focus on actually making sure that the organization has the best chance possible to get what it wants. I mean, that's it. That's all it is. I mean, how can you use AI to help you buy lottery tickets? Because that's kind of what you're asking is, how can we use AI to help us do the exact same things we're trying to do today, but better and faster? If we are doing the wrong things right, one of my favorite Russell Aikoff's quotes is that if you're doing the wrong things right, it just makes you wronger. If that is where we are focusing all of our efforts with AI and security, then we're actually focusing on, we're missing the opportunity that AI is really giving us, because we're burning tokens, we're burning CPU cycles or GPU cycles on trying to predict things or find things, because we don't understand the impact if those things happen. We're chasing the wrong thing. So, I mean, everybody in the world right now is talking about how to answer your question. So there's plenty of materials out there, but the thing is, it's the wrong question to ask. The right question is, how can we optimize AI to help us figure out what needs to be true for us to get what we want, so that we can optimize the control we have and stop worrying about all the things we can't control. Then we can talk about, okay, how do we better find the vulnerabilities in the environment that we have so that we don't need the containment? but we've limited the scope rather than just find all the threats, find all the vulnerabilities. And you need to do the same things, but you can't do this much. You got to do it focused. And that's what the shift that I'm talking about today is all about. I have worked with some MSPs, and the answer is exactly what I'm talking about. You have to figure out what needs to be true for those customers to get the service that they are buying from you, and to make sure that you can deliver it in light of things are going to fail, breaches are going to happen. Are you prepared for that? Do they know what is going to happen ahead of time, or are they just reacting and you're still on the security pinwheel of doom? So the nature of the dynamic business is actually secondary, because every business is dynamic. Every business has shared resources. The question is, should those resources be shared in the first place? Because what is the implication of those resources being shared? I mean, let's take a really simple, obvious example. Let's say that you have a 30,000 person organization and they all basically use the same set of corporate file shares. If somebody's workstation is compromised that has access to that corporate file share and ransomware encrypts that file share, you've just put 29,999 people out of business. So is that really worth the shared cost if something goes wrong of sharing those resources? Yeah, it looks good on paper from a cost optimization point of view, but what are the implications of that decision? And we can't answer that question if we're focused on threats and vulnerabilities. We can only answer that question if we turn it around and say, okay, well, if this fails, what happens? And then we can look at saying, okay, well, how many of those potential failure paths are we actually able to manage? And when are we in trouble versus when are we actually okay? That is a great question. Fundamentally, no, because once it exists, once information has been shared, you can't control where that information goes. Once that technology is accessible, I mean, we've seen this just in the last few weeks, right? GitHub was compromised, and all of the major AI vendors seem to have some degree of impact as a result of, a plugin update automatically in VS Code. So we cannot, what we create and share and put out in the world, we can do our best, but it's like anything else. We have to assume that our best isn't going to be good enough. And so what are we going to do when it falls into the hands of our competitors? It falls into the hands of a hostile nation state. What are we going to do then? And I mean, we can put in all sorts of things, fail safes and extra controls and whatever. But again, if somebody is determined enough to do something, they will find a way. And if that was impossible, we would be undermining our ability to move as well. So you've got the good guys making sure that they can still get at the bad guys, and the bad guys taking advantage of all of those access paths that they can discover. And I mean, again, it's information. Information is really what allows these things to happen. And once you share it, it's gone. You've lost it. You can try your best, but you have to understand that at the moment that something goes out of your head and you tell it to somebody else, you have lost control of it. You may have enough influence to prevent that from spreading further than, you'd like, but there's no guarantees. And that's the problem we have of saying we're going to make this thing that is going to be very, very dangerous, but we're not going to let anybody access it. Well, that's only going to be true for a certain period of time. And then what? Are you ready for the then what? And that's the question we're not really asking ourselves often enough, especially as we're cranking out all these new innovations and technologies as fast as we are. Resilience has to come first, because if we don't know what it takes to be resilient, how can we prioritize what makes sense and that is within our means to actually prevent? What we do in security today is pretty much prevention first. And we've got, if you look at any of the standards, ISO, CSF, most of those are about preventative controls, and we focus on the preventative controls because we come at it from a threat modeling point of view. What can go wrong? Well, we got to prevent this. We got MITRE ATT&CK. We got to prevent all those things. And then they fail. What happens? Our defense in depth strategies that we're taught from day one of cybersecurity 101 end up being really prevention in depth. And then the prevention fails, and then we're screwed because we haven't actually focused on resilience first. So the balance between prevention and resilience is resilience first. What is it that I actually can, in my control, make sure is going to be true? And then, okay, well, I can't afford to build a second data center, or I can't afford to build another manufacturing plant. Okay, but now I've made that choice explicit and conscious. So with that in mind, then what do I need to focus on preventing? What do I really need to deliver resilience? But if you ask the prevention question first, then you're in the million paths that you have no control over. But if you ask the resilience question first, then it scopes the prevention choices that you have that are legitimately available to you. And then that actually helps you focus and not end up chasing your tail or scared every time something new comes along. Because you can either survive, or you know exactly what you can't handle. And so then you can say, okay, well, this new thing, is it going to somehow make it, break something that I really depend on? And you can more easily answer that question than in the abstract, can I prevent this thing? Well, I worked across a bunch of different industries, telecommunications and finance and manufacturing and banking and healthcare and like lots of different industries. And I don't believe with that background and experience that there is one industry that is more vulnerable than others, because the vulnerabilities that we have are a function of the way that we approach security and how integrated security is into value delivery or not. So mature security systems, I mean, this, you've been around for a while, I'm sure. What do we do to measure maturity? Most of the time, it's how many boxes in the security standard that we are supposed to be following, or we've adopted or built our own integrated one. How colored in is the box? And so we're back to control first, we're back to compliance first, but is there validation? Well, yeah, once a year we do a risk assessment on paper, but we don't actually do any validation. Or we do a pen test or red team, but it's limited in this scope. And we think, okay, well, yeah, we've validated our maturity. So I think the industries that are most vulnerable are the organizations that actually have the most assumptions about, we know what we're doing, we're under control, we've got our maturity where it is, but there are gaps in the way that that's actually validated. And so they're surprised when things go wrong, when in fact, you could have figured that out if you went back to what I said and said, okay, what is the most important thing we've got to protect? And we work backwards from that. And you can do this on paper. You don't need pen tests. You don't need anything, but you've got to ask the right questions at the beginning. And that's the problem. We're asking the wrong questions. Are we protected from all these threats? Are we patching all of our vulnerabilities? If so, then therefore we must be secure. So if we believe that, then that makes us more vulnerable, because we're not actually validating that against what we need to be true for the organizations to achieve what it's supposed to do. We're our own little security silo and we're okay, and then we're surprised when things break. So it's not industry specific at all. Well, I think it's what I have observed, and I mean, the problem that we have in the industry is, again, we're taught to do everything right. But the normal outcome of that is that we end up focusing right here. We're focusing on assets, we're focusing on controls, we're focusing on threats, we're focusing on vulnerabilities. But we don't actually get taught to ask the question, okay, well, what is the larger system that these things are happening in? If you look at most organizations, Most organizations are still challenged to, have a CMDB that they can actually use to tell them how things fit together in terms of value delivery. Most project teams you talk to have no idea the revenue contribution of the project that they're trying to deliver. They don't understand what's really at risk, and they don't understand how all of these pieces fit together. So the hidden gaps are really the things where it's like, okay, we've got these controls and we've got these, we've sprinkled our lock icons over our data in transit and at rest, and we've got our protocols everywhere, and we've got our threat models done. But are we really doing the right thing? And because we don't take a systems view, then we don't actually see how all those things are related, how they may be slowing the organization down, how we may actually be causing our own problems, because we get an incident and we fix that incident, and then the same thing happens in 50 other places. I literally had a conversation with the CISO a few months back, and he was telling me about it. His team had come to him and said, hey, we found this problem, but because of the culture, bring me solutions, don't bring me problems, they waited until they had it fixed before they reported it. And they said, great, we found this, it was a configuration defaults problem in this application, but it's under control, and we found it before the bad guys did. The CISO was like, okay, great, but that team has 47 applications, and they use the same tech stack for all 47 applications. Did you check the rest of those 47 applications? Silence. They went back. Every one of those had the same problem, but they wouldn't have found it unless they connected the dots. So those hidden gaps are everywhere. We assume things are safe. We assume things are going to work. We assume our prevention controls aren't going to fail. And those are the gaps that bite us in the backside. Well, I'm going to have if you stand back and look at that question, this is kind of, humans are the weakest link in disguise. And that's where people tend to go with this. My answer is that every problem we have that is a security failure is actually the result of a decision someone did or didn't make about how to ensure value is delivered and an objective was delivered. So it's not a technology failure. The decisions come first. The technology fails because of assumptions that were made that were never surfaced, or failures that happened that nobody expected to happen. Those are decisions we control. So my answer to this is 100%, but it's not because humans are the weakest link. It's because we don't think about the implications of the decisions we make, and we don't realize how much of those decisions we actually control in our environment that we can make. This is back to the containment by design. This is back to resilience first. If we focus on containment and resilience, then we make decisions about that, and the technology failures are accounted for because we understand SAP is a monster. It can fail. We understand that the software that we download from the internet that's maintained by open source people can be compromised, and we are prepared for that. We are designing our security in the, with that in mind, so it's not a surprise. So every one of them, it's not a technology problem. It's the design decisions that enabled that technology problem to become an issue for our organization and value delivery. This is another great question. And again, it comes back to the same sort of deal. So I have a very contrarian view on this because I don't believe there is such a thing as an insider threat. I think insider threats happen because of poor design. If you have somebody able to do something and you do not have the ability to detect when they don't do what you expect, then you have a design flaw in your security environment, full stop. Whether the insider is, your best employee that's been with you for 40 years and they make a mistake, or whether the insider is somebody who gains access or takes over a credential or does something malicious. But every event that happens is a result of people either doing the right thing or not doing what you expect. And those mistakes, those errors that lead us to all these insider threat breaches are only one of two things. They're errors of commission, which is somebody does something you don't expect them to do in a given situation based on who they are, what they have access to, and what privileges or permissions they have. Or the second one is an error of omission, which is somebody doesn't do something that they are supposed to do or expected to do, and therefore leaves you exposed. We, again, design around the happy path. We design with, okay, well, you're an insider or you're an outsider. That's false. It's been false since the beginning, and the military knew this because of information compartmentalization and checks and balances and audits and whatever. But we've forgotten this because, again, we're still in 2026, we're still doing security like it's 1995. It's just that the protect surfaces have gotten smaller. We assume that if you're on the inside, you're safe, whereas we're not designing for detecting things that are unsafe behavior regardless of who does it. So I don't believe in the insider threat. I think it's bad design. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's always great to talk to people. I think the one thing that I would leave you with is that we have millions, literally millions of people who are trained security people who are working hard. They're good people. They want to make a difference, and they are doing what they have been told is the right thing to do. And if that is true, then I would like you to really ask yourself and think about, why are we still where we are now? What are we not thinking about? What are we missing? How can we look at this problem differently rather than just take the assumptions that we've been given for granted? And that's where I got to the flipping it on its head and saying, okay, well, instead of worrying about what can go wrong, we need to focus on what must go right to be true. And this is something that I learned from Russ Lakoff as well, because what he talks about is that if you're focused on preventing the things you don't want, you have a 50% chance of getting something that you want even less. And that's the reality of our security industry at the moment. We're working really, really hard. We've got really great people who are dedicated and trying to make a difference. But if you're doing the things that are impossible to do and you fail at doing those things, it's kind of inevitable. So we need to focus on what we can control, and we need to really ask ourselves, what is it that I can actually control, and focus on that instead. And based on my experience in the organizations that I've helped, it makes all the difference in the world.